Okay, this is the final segment of a series I've been doing on meditation and prayer. And I'm calling this the Cain and Abel dynamic, which I've taken from my book, Practical Guide to Meditation and Prayer, published by Unity, I think in 1990. It's been a while back. But it is still has a lot of ideas in it that I am very comfortable with. I have published that book and updated it. But this Cain and Abel dynamic is one that caught my attention early. It's a story of Cain and Abel, as you know, two brothers who one day made offerings to the Lord, and the Lord rejected Cain's and accepted Abel's, and Cain got jealous and slew his brother. So we know the mark of Cain. We know the story of all of this. Cain was a tiller of soil. He was a farmer. Abel was a shepherd. And so there are many thoughts around why God may have rejected one offering and accepted another, but we're not going to really focus so much on that as we are on what I'm calling the Cain and Abel dynamic. So Cain was a farmer, Abel was a shepherd. The farmer, and what we're going to do is internalize this story. We're going to take a spiritual approach to it. The farmer stays in one place, planting crops in defined areas, making his location at any given time predictable. A shepherd must constantly be on the move, changing the location of his flock so his sheep will not overgraze the land. So we've got two dynamics going on, one that stays in place and one that has to move around. You recall a lot of the early American, the range wars and so forth, the problems that people with cattle or sheep, either one, had with people that needed to build fences to keep cattle and sheep out. There were people that were used to grazing land and so forth, and out here, it takes quite a bit of land to support one animal. That's sort of what's going on with the wild horse situation, where a lot of ranchers don't like the wild horses because they take up valuable grazing land, and the wild horses need the grazing land, so there's a kind of a confrontation between the two ways of thinking. And it will be resolved probably someday. I don't know how exactly, because both have concerns. And Beth and I spent 8 months filming wild horses here in Grand Junction, which was really a memorable time in our experience. We would go up on the Book Cliffs almost every weekend that we could. My weekend starts on Thursday and ends on Saturday. But so we filmed them, and we produced a film where the wild Mustangs run, and it was just, as I said, a very memorable time. When we moved here, somebody told us about the wild horse herd, and we knew we would have to get up there eventually to start looking for them. And it's on a 30,000-acre park. Most of you have been up there, haven't you? To some aspect of it. It's a very scenic area. Some of the places require almost a four-wheel drive, but if you're careful, you can get back there. But there were times we would show up and the roads would be gone, from rainstorms. So you never know what you're going to find back there. But the point here is the farmer is one mindset, and the shepherd is quite another. The farmer is a fixed location, and the shepherd is moving around. So these two characters represent two aspects of our consciousness. And you may not think about this when you're just reading the Bible, when you're reading the story. But if you take a metaphysical approach to the Bible, a spiritual approach to the Bible, you start seeing that it really is rich in analogies of what's going on in us. And when we can look at it in this way and begin to apply some of the principles we find them to be quite helpful. So these two characters represent two aspects of our consciousness. One seeks the comfort of familiarity, while the other seeks the expansive mental attitude that invites growth. You notice you have these two dynamics going on in you. There's a part of us that doesn't want anything to be disturbed. We want change as long as we don't have to do it, as long as we're not the ones that have to change. But we love change. When you're having a problem in your life and you're praying to resolve that problem, you're praying for change. But you're not necessarily praying for you to change. And so there's a resistance to that in us. There's one part of us that's the farmer that wants to keep all the fences in place. You know, I like life the way it is, and it's all fine except this little problem over here, and when I solve that little thing, we'll be just fine. But there's this other side that can never be contained within the fences. It's Walt Whitman, you know, that part of us that cannot be contained between the hat and the boots. It's a soul. It's the spiritual aspect of us. It is larger than all of the fences we have put up. And by fences, I mean self-definitions, the way we define ourselves, the self-image. And this is really a story about the difference between the soul and the self-image. The self-image being that part that doesn't like a lot of change, or it likes to be totally in control of change. When a crisis occurs, that part is all disturbed. And, you know, what's the Chinese definition for crisis, or the definition for crisis, is opportunity. It's not an opportunity for the self-image. It's a problem. I don't want this change. I want to get life back to normal. So I pray that God will bring about a solution so I can just be normal, just let my life be normal again. Whereas God is basically saying, I don't want you to be normal. I want you to move beyond these parameters you have defined for yourself. And that's the whole idea of expansion, spiritual expansion. Why do we desire more in life? Why do we desire to be more? It's because we are more. As spiritual beings, we are far more than any definition we've come up for ourselves, or any definition that society has put upon us, any definition that family has put upon us. As I said a while back, it's certainly greater than that definition that is put on you when you go back to that family reunion or that class reunion. There's something more to us that is always pushing forth, that expansive nature. You drop the seed in the ground, it dies to that old seed self, and something begins to expand from that. That's the natural expansive activity of God. So Cain represents that tendency in us to seek out the familiar, to set up predictable routines, and hope nothing comes around to disturb our world. And so a lot of people will view the practice of prayer as a way to keep disturbance from happening, to keep change from happening, to keep me from having to be something more than I am against my will, or something I didn't think of myself. Maybe I do want to expand my horizons. I go get an education. I go, learn new things to expand, and that's all in my control. But it's those things that happen that are not in our control that often contribute most to our expanded understanding of ourselves. Have you ever been in a situation that you thought was beyond your ability, only to have you discover that it was not, that you were able to do it, that you were able to grow past what you thought were your limitations and actually do this thing? And that's what growth is all about. That's the self-image expanding its fence lines, That's Cain expanding his territory. But what happened in the story, well, let me say that Abel represents that part of us that's on the move, growing, indefinable, and changing. So this idea that Cain was jealous of Abel and he slew his brother, that represents us trying to fight change, trying to fight the need to take a deeper look at ourselves, fighting the need to say to this situation, okay, you're calling upon me to do something I don't think I can do. So I'm going to fight this. I'm going to do everything I can. I'm going to ask my neighbor to help. I'm going to ask my brother, all my in-laws to help, so I don't have to change, so I don't have to do something different or be something different. So that's Cain slaying Abel. It's suppressing that interest in becoming more than I am right now. And we know ultimately that can't happen. When the Lord found out the story, actually probably knew the story all along, Cain was banished to the land of Nod. And what's interesting about that land, one of the definitions, and you know the ancient Hebrews always named things for a reason. There's a meaning behind every name. But one of the meanings for the land of Nod is wandering with uncertainty. So that's about as bad a punishment Cain could have received as anything. To be this person that wants fences and definitions and a very predictable life, being cast into a land of wandering with uncertainty. It's a way of saying that the Lord does not let us sit around. God does not let us maintain the status quo of who we have defined ourselves as being. That our definition of us is not the same as God's definition. And God's saying, I'm not going to let you alone until you get the hang of my definition. And that's why we're never satisfied. We're Cain building fences saying, this is my life, this is the way I want it to be forever. And this whole expansive process in us, this Lord unfolding, this same power that unfolds the seed to become something more, is working through us. It's saying, you can't stay here. That's not how you're designed. There's always something more. There's always something deeper. But we try really hard to keep that from happening. It's not because we don't want change, again, because we don't want to move our fence lines. We don't want to make the changes in ourselves. We want things around us to change. Stop upsetting me, we're telling somebody else, rather than looking at ourselves and saying, how could I rise above that person upsetting me? Or I would like to change the world. There are a lot of people that would like to change the world because it upsets them. But what if we ourselves rose to a place where we were unupsettable? I'm not sure that's a word, but what if we did that? What if we invented that word? Non-upsettable. What if we could not be upset? Let's put it that way. What if the world didn't change at all, but we did? And we got to the point where that thing that used to just drive me crazy has no power over me. Isn't that spiritual power? Isn't that the ability to be in this world but not of it? It's a pretty powerful place to be. If I can get to the place where the world and all of its stuff doesn't upset me, then I have truly overcome the world. Well, we don't have to do that all today, but we can look at the things that are happening in our lives and watching our reaction is my reaction, am I resisting, is that a Cain side? Am I trying to keep everything the same? I don't agree with that person's opinion, so it's going to upset me. So I'm giving them the power to degrade my experience. Is that what I want to keep doing? Or can I listen to that and say, that is reasonable to you, I'm sure, and just let it go? Is that possible? Well, it's possible. So will we slay Abel? Will we slay that part that says, yes, it is possible? Or will we allow it to come forth? Will we allow Abel to be the one that rules the day? Because the Cain side of us cannot stop growth. And it just keeps nudging. Something keeps pushing. Something will keep bothering us until we rise above that reaction of being bothered. So our life is full of these things. You know, we can be here at church and you can be talking to somebody and they can say something you just totally don't agree with. Maybe you'll think about it all day long. Maybe you'll allow them to have taken you to a place. People here at church don't do that, of course, this particular church, but you know what I mean. You can see something, you can maybe hear something on TV or something that just sets you off. So will you slay your Abel, or you become Cain, slay your Abel and say, I'm going to keep my fences where they are, and that opinion upsets me, so I'm going to be upset. I don't have a choice. That's just the way it is. Now, if they'll change, and maybe I can go change them. How many of you have had luck changing other people? Not even one? How many have tried? I know you have. She's my wife. That's kind of interesting. You'd think we'd catch on after a while. But this is the story. I mean, this is an alternative it's offering us is, okay, we're not so successful changing other people. But we can change ourselves. And it doesn't mean we have to change ourselves in a way we don't want to be. It means that we become willing to see something from a higher place. And actually, we like that person. We like that person we become when we see something from a higher place. Have you ever had the experience of actually forgiving someone? How good that feels? Where maybe you're just totally angry at them. And something in you said, you know, this anger is just killing me. It would be a lot better if I'd let it go. And so you actually let it go and you have no animosity. And what a wonderful freeing feeling that is, to rise above that. That's your Abel side. The Cain side is over in the corner sucking its thumb with its blanket. But the Abel side is able to rise above that. And it feels very natural. It's not unnatural. There are so many reasons we don't forgive, because we're right usually. It's a state of mind that, you know, is set out a certain way that doesn't allow us to see any other way. And so we fight that. We resist that. And that's Cain slaying Abel. So we just want to be aware of it. You may be praying for a condition to change so you don't have to. And this is something worth looking at. Almost in every case, if there's something that's disturbing you, there's nearly always a way to lift your vision. And you know, this is the value of like reading inspirational material. I've talked about that many times in this series. That if you're having a bad day and you pick up something and just a couple of lines change your thinking, change the way you feel. You've risen, you've allowed the Abel side to take over. And that problem that you're having, suddenly it doesn't look so bad. It looks like it can be resolved. Maybe you don't know how. But that's the thing, you don't have to know how. Answered prayer is not knowing how the thing is going to work out, it's accepting that it will. And you know you have reached that point by how you feel. You're at peace. A very important thing. The answer to a prayer is not necessarily a manifestation, a thing that you see differently. It's a shift in perception. It's Cain saying, I don't need these fences. There's something more to me. And the answer to all prayer really is about becoming more, allowing yourself to be more than you were 5 minutes ago. 5 minutes ago, you were shivering in terror, afraid of something. Answered prayers when you see in yourself, find in yourself that center of power that takes you above that appearance. You're no more of a person than you were before. You're just uncovered. It's the man finding the treasure buried in the field. You found your treasure. And you have risen above the level of the problem. It's been said you can't solve the problem on its own level, and that's exactly right. So do you put the problem on a different level, or do you put yourself on a different level? You don't probably have the power to put the problem on another level, but we always have the power to put ourselves on another level. So you pray for something, and what do you want? You want a solution that is peace-giving. You want peace of mind. Isn't that the answer? So you look at this thing, and it's still a problem by all appearances. But you have changed. You become something more in your expression. That which is in me is greater than that which is in the world. You have gotten that. You've suddenly risen above that which is in the world. So the appearance stays the same, but you are different. So you're praying for a condition to change so you don't have to, well, you want to. Never fight that. We often have to stop and think about what we're doing when we're asking for a certain solution. We're often asking for life to change so I don't have to. But you're going to be much happier if you do the changing, because you are more centered in your power. You're more of a person. You're more of your soul in expression. You were not given a spirit of fear. So why are we living out of one? Where'd that come from? It's a reminder of who and what we are, created in the image and after the likeness of God. Can you imagine something created in the image and after the likeness of God ever shivering in its boots? I can't. I've shivered in my boots, but it's the I that's not created in the image and after the likeness of God. It's the I that I created. That's self-image. So the answer to my prayer is let my self-image go. Let that part of me go that is saying, this thing is bigger than I am. It's me opening more of myself, my spiritual self, my soul. So we want some unusual circumstance to go away so we can get back to living life as usual, and that's the Cain side of us. We want change as long as it's out there someplace. Bring about this answer. Get rid of this person that's bothering me. Some change that occurs outside so I don't have to change. And sometimes that happens. But what happens after that is another one just like it shows up. And it keeps showing up. as Sigmund Freud said, with monotonous regularity. So why do I keep having the same kind of problem? Why does the same kind of personality keep showing up in my life and bothering me? It bothers me because I'm botherable. There's a part of me that is at a level of life that I can easily be disturbed, and I've got to keep everything just a certain way. And you've got to talk to me a certain way, and the world has to behave a certain way. Otherwise, I'm going to really get upset. And one of the best ways to not get upset is just shut everything off and just hang out with all the people I agree with. Don't ever hang out with somebody you don't agree with, because you will be upset and you'll get into a battle with Abel. And Abel ultimately wins that battle because Cain loses big time. He loses the farm. He's thrown out into the land of wandering, where nothing is certain. There's no worse punishment for us than to want to keep everything the same, and life says that's not going to happen. And again, we call that crisis. And what is crisis but opportunity? Opportunity to do what? To let more of ourselves come out. To be more of who and what we are at the deepest level. That saying, a smooth sea never made a good sailor, is really true. It's like the wind just kind of blows along and it's a bright sunny day and the ship coasts along. Well, Beth and I used to sail a Hobie Cat, and we found that to be true right away. As long as everything is cool, air is flowing nice, it's easy to sail. But when a storm comes up, we got hit by a tornado in Missouri while we were on the lake, this huge lake. And we ended up spending the entire night on the beach in the middle of the woods, trying to stay warm under the sail. We had no clothes that were made for, and we were soaking wet. So what I learned is I never want to do that again, so I better learn how to avoid such things. But had we never been into that kind of situation, you know, and we're in a number of others, which is why we sold that boat. Just so many rough seas you can take in one lifetime. But it's really true that the more difficult the weather became, the better I got with the boat. And what used to terrify me at one stage suddenly seemed like nothing. Or not suddenly, but over time seemed like nothing. So we want to keep all the winds just barely breathing, so it just moves us along exactly like we want, and we know exactly where we want to go, and everything's good. But then a squall comes up, and we're lost. And we pray to God, why did you do this to me? You know, what did I do to deserve this? And God's response really is, well, there's just squalls. You live on earth. There's weather. Weather happens. And you happen to be in the way. You happen to be on a boat when this weather happens. So we can do that with our whole life. You know, why is this happening to me? The answer is always the same, though. It's to make you a better sailor. It's to cause you to look deeper in yourself. And stop, you know, defining yourself by the fence lines you put up. Start understanding that you are a spiritual being having a human experience, not the other way around. Not a human being dabbling in spiritual ideas. You are a spiritual being. I am a spiritual being. We are learning to appreciate who we are and what we are at the deepest level. And we don't always do that when the skies are clear. The value of a challenge may be as simple as letting go of a negative emotion and proving to yourself that you do have a choice about how you feel. And that's a huge one when you think about it. Because where do we live? You know, where's our life happening? What is the quality of our life? It's how we're thinking and feeling at any given moment. If you are depressed at this moment, you're saying, I'm having a bad day. Well, what does that have to do with the actual day? Ask the person next to you, are you having a bad day? Is this bad day thing catching? Is it something I have no choice because a bad day just happens and I am here and so we're all going to have a bad day? Where do bad days occur? They occur at the Cain level. We define ourselves as certain ways, things are not going according to that, and we have a bad day. So we go out and try to change the world and make it so we have better days all the time. So again, the value of a challenge may be as simple as letting go of a negative emotion and proving to yourself that you do have a choice about how you feel. That's what I found on the sailboat. A wind would come up, all my tensions would come up. I started realizing I don't have to react that way. In fact, that's detrimental. The more uptight you are when you're trying to deal with a crisis of any kind, the worse you're going to do. The more relaxed you are, the better you do. As I've said before, I showed up at a wreck one time. I was Beth and I were behind a man and his wife on a motorcycle who hit a guardrail, and they were hurt pretty bad. Several people stopped, and several were panicking. What do we do? And this woman who was a nurse showed up, totally calm. Everybody stand back, and she took over. That's the kind of person I want showing up when I have one of those things. And I'm not going to have one because I sold my motorcycle. But isn't that how you are best? When you're at peace with yourself, when you have your own thoughts and emotions under control. That's what we want. So this is no small thing. The value of the challenge may be as simple as letting go of a negative emotion and proving to yourself that you do have a choice about how you feel. That thing's not making me feel this way, that person, that thing. Your Cain may attempt to slay your Abel, but growth is inevitable. So think growth and let go. And that's the secret. That's how I want to leave this series, is that we do have a choice. Whatever's going on in your life, it's a physical challenge, if it's something in your finances, something in your household, something in your family member undergoing some challenge, just know that in yourself, stop defining yourself by your fence lines and start defining yourself like, I am an expression of God. All things are possible through me. And it opens your mind to peace, the kind of peace that does the most good when you walk into any situation. That's what we want to bring to our life, is that peace that knows that that in me is greater than that which is in the world. All right? Thank you for coming out, and I hope you have a best Thanksgiving ever.